calm down. Calm down. I'm sick of you. Calm down. Calm down.
Who are the alt-right and what sort of effect are they having in American society now?
Well, it's sort of an umbrella term for a spectrum of very radical right thinking, ranging from outright neo-Nazis to actually explicit fascists, to more benign sort of middling ground, represented, I would say, by Breitbart News, or more recently here in Australia, Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux.
Yeah.
We call them the alt-light, and they're not overt white nationalists in the way that a lot of the more extreme spectrum of the alt-right is. But it's fundamentally this online phenomenon. It organized online. It actually had a lot of its origins in video gaming community.
The United States bills itself, as we know, as the land of the free and the home of the brave, but it is also the home of conspiracy theories. Remember those theories about the September 11 attacks? They claimed the attacks had not been committed by terrorists, but were the work of the US government, looking for ways to crack down on civil liberties.
These theories were brushed off as the rantings of the loony right, but they did keep coming, spreading on the internet and on some mainstream media. And when Donald Trump ran for president, he voiced the concerns of the new and very much growing alt-right.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people.
He was hailed as the new champion of the extreme right and gained enough support to propel him into the White House.
We're joined now by a man who has investigated the extreme right in the United States for 3 decades, David Neiwart, author of the new book, Alt America, The Rise of the Radical Right in the Age of Trump. David, good morning to you. Welcome.
Morning.
Pleasure.
Not all Australians would be aware of the 9/11 conspiracy theory, so why don't you talk us through those?
Well, the 9/11 conspiracy theories basically were this idea that the whole attack, the whole terrorist attack, was actually a false flag operation, which is a term that conspiracy theorists use for all kinds of events, but essentially that it was all faked, or there was actually an inside job. Actually, a lot of them actually do claim that they were fake, but in this case, it was an inside job, that it wasn't actually carried out by Al Qaeda, but was rather carried out by nefarious forces working within the government, possibly by Israeli intelligence. Depended on the conspiracy theory and the theorist and what they were claiming. But it was basically a way to spread a lot of uncertainty and fear about what actually happened.
And it really confused the issue. Similar stories swirled around the Boston Marathon attack and also the Paris attacks, didn't they?
Yes, well, actually, just about any event that we have that happens anymore is cast as a conspiracy theory. Probably the most notorious of these that's had actually been consequential has been you may recall the Sandy Hook massacre in Connecticut of 28 children, school children. That was cast as a false flag attack. More recently, we had the mass shooting in Las Vegas that was also claimed to be a false flag.
But that mass shooting in Vegas, apparently the shooter was heard at a diner, and he was a conspiracy theorist himself. He was talking about all sorts of different conspiracy theories.
Yes. Yeah, not just overheard. There was multiple sources that indicate that he himself was a conspiracy theorist, and this is part of the real problem with conspiracism, is that it has this really powerfully unhinging effect to the point that people will do just about anything. Because one of the things that happens, of course, is that you dehumanize the people who are the subjects of these conspiracy theories, to the point that they're just pawns, or maybe they are active conspirators themselves. So yeah, it's really rather frightening. I had a 28-year-old niece in that crowd in Las Vegas. Barely escaped with her life.
Yeah, okay. That must have been very, very frightening for you and your family. If we look at the timeline of this, the early 2000s, these sort of issues were on the fringes. Enter Barack Obama in a big way, and that seemed to supercharge the alt-right and these conspiracy theorists. Why is that?
Well, a lot of it had to do with the fact that, you know, the 9/11 conspiracy theories were probably the most popular before that, and a lot of this had to do with, you know, so the audience for it was not mainstream Republicans by any means, or mainstream conservatives at all. Rather, it was this, they had their own world. And they were very right-wing still, but they were, you know, they didn't, there was not a sort of coalition between mainstream conservatives and these conspiracy theorists.
Well, there has been quite dramatic protest action here this morning outside Parliament for the first day that Parliament has resumed since the leadership spill. And you can see behind me, Greenpeace protesters have unfurled
part of the beauty of me is that I'm very rich. Yeah, I'm actually a nice person. A lot of us are really smart. I'm really smart. Went to the Wharton School of Finance. Even then, a long time ago, like the hardest or one of the hardest schools to get into. Did well at the school. Came out, made a fortune.
We need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly.
They're hoping that that sends a strong message to the Prime Minister, who's announced that he's killing off the National Energy Guarantee, that policy too toxic.
Oh, okay.
That legislation couldn't proceed, so our focus now turns to the reliability aspect of the National Energy Guarantee, which is very much needed, and reducing prices.
You got the policy through your party room 3 times.
We did.
With significant numbers.
We did.
And it's dead.
And it is. Well, we do have a policy to reduce emissions.
What's that policy?
Well, we've got the Emissions Reduction Fund. You've still got the renewable energy target that's in place. We have a national energy
but that's a target, that's not a policy.
A Muppet Show, and that the show is now over, he says. Well, it could be, but not while ever Labor's engaged in theatrical direction.
Time to meet the Muppets on The Muppet Show tonight. It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. I really just don't know. It's like a kind of torture to have to watch their show. But now, let's get things started. It's time to get things started. Why don't they get things started?
The Prime Minister describes his entire party Muppets.
On the most sensational, celebrational, inspirational, Muppetational. This is what we call the Muppet Show.
For your chance to be Prime Minister of Australia this week, just answer the phone within 3 rings and say, I wake up in a shipping container. That's it. That's all you have to do. Remember those magic words. I wake up in a shipping container, and you can be Prime Minister of Australia for a week.
Well, the events of the last more than 2 weeks ago resembled a Muppet Show, as I said in the Parliament, and I think all Australians were very disappointed about that, and they have every right to be. It was a confusing and bewildering series of events, not ones that I had any part in, but the party has made a decision now, and when you're placed in command, you take charge, and my job is to completely focus on the Australian people and their needs and what matters to them and what...
Drop it.
They care about, and that's why the curtain has come down on that Muppet Show, and an absolute new curtain has lifted up.
Where deep down in my heart, I still love you.
And we're focused 100% on getting people's electricity prices down. We're focusing on the drought, backing small business to make sure that they create the jobs that Australians rely on and need.